I thought Grandma's house would be the one place where I could finally be myself with the man I loved. But as soon as Alex stepped onto the porch beside me, the door slammed shut with a bang that shook my world to its core. The wooden frame rattled, the brass knocker bounced once, and the cheerful wreath she had hung for her birthday fluttered like it was trying to escape. My hand was still raised to knock again when the lock clicked from the inside. Alex looked at me, his brown eyes wide with the same confusion I felt. Ryan, did she just? I swallowed hard, the September Chicago air suddenly too cold for early fall. We had driven 2 hours from the city for this. My idea, my grand gesture to celebrate Grandma Eleanor's 78th birthday and finally introduce the person who had made the last 18 months feel like home. She had been the only one in my family who didn't flinch when I came out 5 years ago. Everyone else, Dad, my sister Claire, even my brother Jake, had slowly faded from my life with polite texts and avoided holidays. But Grandma had called me the very next day after I told her, voice steady over the phone. You're still my boy, Ryan. Nothing changes that. We had laughed about it later, Alex and I, planning this visit like it was the final piece of the puzzle. I had pictured her opening the door with that same warm smile, pulling Alex into a hug, maybe teasing him about his terrible coffee or to the way she teased me. Instead, the porch light flickered once and stayed dark. I knocked again, softer this time. Grandma, it's me, Ryan. I brought someone I really want you to meet. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps retreating down the hallway. Alex shifted his weight, the gift bag in his hand crinkling. Inside was a first edition copy of her favorite mystery novel and a bottle of the lavender hand cream she loved. We had picked them out together at the bookstore in Wicker Park, laughing over how she would pretend to be shocked, even though she always knew when I was hiding something. My chest tightened. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to go. I had spent the whole drive rehearsing the moment in my head, imagining her eyes lighting up when she saw how happy Alex made me. He was everything I had ever wanted, kind, patient, the kind of guy who remembered that I hated mushrooms on pizza and that my mom's death when I was 12 had left a hole I still couldn't quite fill. Grandma had been the one to help me through those early days of grief. Now I wanted her to see that I had found someone who could help fill the empty spaces. Alex touched my arm gently. Maybe she's not feeling well. We can come back another time. His voice was calm, but I heard the uncertainty underneath. He had grown up in a family that celebrated every part of him, including the fact that he was gay. He didn't understand the careful dance I had been doing with mine for years. I shook my head. She knew we were coming. I called her yesterday. She sounded excited. The door stayed closed. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Her voice, warm and familiar, asking callers to leave a message. I hung up without speaking. Alex set the gift bag down on the welcome mat and stepped back, giving me space. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of burning leaves from a neighbor's yard. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Everything felt too normal, too ordinary for the way my stomach was twisting. I sat on the porch step, elbows on my knees, staring at the closed door like it might change its mind. Alex sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. Tell me what you're thinking, he said quietly. I didn't know how to explain the sudden fear that maybe I'd been wrong all these years. Maybe Grandma's acceptance had only been words on the phone, safe because it was distant. Maybe seeing me with Alex in real life, holding hands, laughing together, being openly us had been too much. The thought made my throat ache. She had been my anchor. When Dad stopped answering my calls after I came out, when Claire's invitations to family dinners mysteriously dried up, Grandma had been the one constant. She sent birthday card with $20 bills and handwritten notes that always ended with "Love you more than all the stars, kiddo." She never asked me to hide. So why was the door locked now? Alex didn't push. He just stayed there, solid and steady, the way he had been since the night we met at a friend's rooftop party last spring. I had spilled my drink on his shoes, apologized 1,000 times, and he had laughed and said, "Best accident I've had all year." We had talked until sunrise about everything and nothing. Books, bad first dates, the way Chicago winters made you appreciate small moments of warmth. Falling for him had felt like breathing after holding my breath for too long. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and tried the doorbell again. Nothing. The house stayed dark and quiet, like it was holding its breath along with me. Alex picked up the gift bag. Let's go get some coffee. We can figure this out. We walked back to my car in silence. As I started the engine, I glanced one last time in the house. The curtain in the front window twitched, just for a second, then fell still. Someone had been watching. The realization hit me like a second slam. Whatever had just happened, it wasn't over. The drive back to the city felt longer than 2 hours. Alex kept the radio low, some indie playlists we both liked, but neither of us sang along. My mind kept replaying the moment the door closed, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I said something wrong on the phone? Had Dad called her and filled her head with the same old warnings about the lifestyle he used to throw at me? I gripped the steering wheel tighter. By the time we reached my apartment in Logan Square, the sun was dipping low, painting the brick buildings gold. Alex followed me inside without being asked. He always knew when I needed him close. I dropped my keys on the counter and finally let the frustration out. She was supposed to be different. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. She still might be. People get scared, Ryan, even the ones who love us. I wanted to believe him, but the sound of that door slamming kept echoing in my head, louder than any words of comfort. I had spent years convincing myself that at least one person in my family saw me completely. Now that belief felt as fragile as a glass in Grandma's old storm door. That night, I lay awake long after Alex fell asleep, his breathing steady beside me. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if love always came with conditions I hadn't noticed before. The question followed me in uneasy dreams where doors kept closing no matter how hard I knocked. Morning brought no answers, only a single text from an unknown number. It was short and signed, but I knew the handwriting even in pixels. I'm sorry. I can't right now. Please understand. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Understand what? I typed nothing. Instead, I set the phone down and went to make coffee for the man still sleeping in my bed, the man I refused to hide anymore. Whatever Grandma's reasons, I wasn't going back into the closet for anyone, not even her. But the ache in my chest said otherwise. The text sat on my phone like a live wire for 3 days. I read it every morning before work, every night before bed, searching for hidden meaning between the short sentences. Alex suggested we give her space, said maybe she needed time to process seeing me in a relationship. I wanted to believe that. Part of me still clung to the image of the grandmother who had baked me chocolate chip cookies and listened to my middle school heartbreaks without judgment. Work offered no escape. At the marketing agency downtown, deadlines piled up for a new client campaign. I stared at mood boards of smiling families and felt the irony twist in my gut. My own family portrait had fractured the moment I stopped pretending. Colleagues asked about my weekend plans, and I gave vague answers about visiting relatives. Only my friend Mia, the graphic designer 2 desks over, knew the truth. She caught me staring at my phone during lunch and slid into the chair across from me. Still no word. I shook my head. Mia had been there the night I came out to the family over a tense Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago. She had picked me up afterward when Dad told me not to come back until I fixed myself. Grandma had been the only one who called that night to make sure I was okay. Now, even that safety net felt torn. Mia squeezed my arm. You deserve people who choose you every day, Ryan. Not just when it's convenient. Her words stayed with me on the train ride home. When I walked into the apartment, Alex was already there, sleeves rolled up, stirring something that smelled like garlic and tomatoes. He had let himself in with the spare key I gave him last month. Seeing him in my kitchen, humming off-key to the radio, loosened something tight in my chest. This was real. This was mine. I refused to let one slammed door take it away. We ate on the couch, legs tangled, talking about everything except Grandma. Alex told me about the student who had come to him after class, scared to tell his parents he was gay. I listened and realized how much I wanted to be the kind of adult that kid could look up to, someone who didn't flinch. When we finished eating, Alex pulled me close. Whatever happens with your grandma, we face it together. Okay. I nodded against his shoulder, but inside, doubt whispered that maybe together wasn't enough if the one person who had always stood by me now stood behind a locked door. The next morning, my phone rang while I was brushing my teeth. Unknown number. I answered with a mouth full of foam. Ryan? It's Eleanor. Grandma's voice sounded smaller than I remembered. Can we talk? I nearly dropped the phone. Alex was still asleep, so I stepped onto the tiny balcony overlooking the alley. Cool air hit my face. Yeah, I'm here. She didn't waste time. I panicked. Seeing you with him, it brought back memories I thought I buried. Your grandfather, God rest him, never accepted who I was either. Not really. I spent 40 years pretending parts of myself didn't exist so the family would stay together. When I saw you standing there so open, so proud, it terrified me. What if I had been braver? What if I had lost everything for nothing? Her words hit like stones in still water. I had never known. She had always seemed so sure, so steady. You never told me any of that. I know. I thought if I could just protect you from the same pain, that would be enough. But watching you walk up with Alex, it was like looking in a mirror at the life I never let myself have. I slammed the door because I couldn't face what I gave up. Tears burned my eyes. So what now? I want to try again. If you'll let me. Bring him back. I'll leave the door open this time. I promise. I leaned against the railing, wind whipping my hair. Part of me wanted to run back there immediately. The other part, the part that had spent years learning to protect my heart, hesitated. I'll think about it. We hung up. When I went inside, Alex was awake, watching me with quiet concern. I told him everything. He listened, then said the words I needed to hear. You don't owe anyone a second chance. But if you want to give her one, I'm right beside you. That weekend we drove back to the suburbs. The same porch, the same wreath. This time the door opened before I could knock. Grandma stood there in her blue cardigan, eyes red-rimmed, but determined. She looked at Alex first, really looked, then pulled him into a hug that seemed to last forever. I'm sorry, she whispered against his shoulder. Welcome to the family. We spent the afternoon in her kitchen, the one that still smelled like cinnamon and old books. She asked Alex about his teaching job, about how we met, about his favorite color. I watched them and felt the cracks inside me start to mend. But as the sun set and we prepared to leave, Dad's truck pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, face tight, and the fragile piece shattered all over again. Dad didn't even look at Alex. His eyes locked on me like I was a stranger trespassing on his mother's porch. Ryan, inside. Now. Grandma stepped between us, small but fierce. This is my house, Michael. You don't get to order people around here. The air thickened. Alex's hand found mine, steady and warm. I straightened my shoulders. Whatever you want to say, you can say it in front of both of us. Dad's jaw clenched. Your brother told me what's going on. You parading some guy around like it's normal. After everything your mother and I did for you. Grandma's voice cracked like a whip. Your sister-in-law is turning in her grave hearing you talk like that. Dad flinched but didn't back down. Mom, you raised us better. This isn't what God intended. I felt every word like a slap. Alex squeezed my hand tighter. I had heard the same speech before, but hearing it now, with the man I loved standing right beside me, hurt in a whole new way. Grandma turned to me, eyes pleading. Ryan, you don't have to listen to this. But I did, because running away had never fixed anything. Dad, I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking you to see me. This is who I am. This is who I love. He looked at Alex, then really looked, and something in his expression shifted just for a second before hardening again. You're throwing your life away and dragging your grandmother into it. Grandma's face went pale. She reached for the doorframe like she might fall. Alex moved instantly, guiding her to the porch swing. I stayed rooted, staring at the man who used to throw baseballs with me in the backyard. If loving Alex means losing you, then I guess that's the price. Dad shook his head. Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart. He climbed back into his truck and drove away without another word. The dust settled slowly. Inside, Grandma sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling around a cup of tea Alex had made. I thought if I stood up to him this time, her voice trailed off. I knelt beside her. You did stand up. That matters. She looked at both of us, eyes shining. I wasted so many years being afraid. Don't let my mistakes be yours, boys. fight for each other. We stayed late that night, talking until the stars came out. Grandma told stories about her own youth, secret letters to a woman she had loved in college, the choice she made to marry Grandpa instead because it was the right thing. Hearing it broke something open inside me. I had always seen her as my rock. Now I saw the cracks she had hidden so well. On the drive home, Alex was quiet. When we reached my apartment, he finally spoke. "Your dad's never going to change, is he?" I pulled him into bed and held him close. "Maybe not, but we don't need him to. We have each other. And now we have Grandma too." Sleep came easier that night, but the peace didn't last. Monday morning brought a frantic call from Claire. "Ryan, Jake's been posting things online. About you. About Alex. It's bad." I opened my laptop with shaking hands. My brother's Facebook page was full of rants, photos of us on Grandma's porch that someone had taken from across the street, captions calling us disgusting and ruining the family name. Comments poured in from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My stomach dropped. Alex read over my shoulder, face tight. "We can report it. Block him." But the damage was already spreading. Work emails started coming in, concerned colleagues who had seen the posts. Mia texted me a screenshot of a group chat where someone from the office had shared the link. The world I had carefully built felt like it was cracking open. That evening I sat on the fire escape with Alex, city lights twinkling below. I'm tired of hiding pieces of myself to make other people comfortable. He rested his head on my shoulder. "Then stop hiding. We'll face whatever comes. Together." His words gave me courage I didn't know I had. The next day, I walked into the office and asked for a meeting with HR. I told them everything about the posts, about being gay, about refusing to live in fear anymore. They listened. They promised to handle it. But the real test came that weekend when Grandma called again. "Ryan, your father wants a family meeting. At my house. He says if we don't talk this out, he'll cut me off too." I closed my eyes. "What do you want to do?" Her answer was immediate. "I want my grandson and the man he loves at my table. The rest is up to them." We drove back on Saturday with our hearts in our throats. The same porch. The same door. This time it stayed open. But inside, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Dad sat at one end of the table, Jake at the other, Claire between them, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. Grandma presided at the head like a queen defending her kingdom. The conversation started civil. Then Jake opened his mouth. "This isn't about hate. It's about what's right." I looked at Alex beside me, then at the family that had once been my whole world. What's right is loving people exactly as they are. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Accusations flew. At one point, Dad stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Grandma slammed her hand on the table, hard. The sound cut through everything. "Enough. This is my house. My rules. And my rule is that love is love. If you can't accept that, you can leave." Silence fell. Dad looked at her like she had grown a second head. Jake muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Claire stayed, tears in her eyes. "I don't understand it, Ryan, but I don't want to lose you either." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a crack in the wall. The weeks that followed felt like walking on thin ice that was slowly thickening. Dad didn't call, but he also didn't block my number. Jake deleted the posts after Grandma threatened to cut him out of her will. An empty threat, probably, but it worked. Claire started texting me memes again, awkward but genuine. Small steps. At work, HR followed through. The colleague who had shared the link received a warning. Mia brought me coffee every morning like a silent cheerleader. Alex's students noticed he seemed happier. He told me one night, over Thai takeout, that he had come out to his entire faculty during a staff meeting, inspired by my courage. Hearing that made my chest swell with something I hadn't felt in years, pride in who I was becoming. Grandma became a regular part of our lives. She started coming into the city on the train once a month for grandma-grandson dates that always included Alex. We took her to the Art Institute, to Millennium Park, even to a Cubs game where she cheered louder than anyone when they won in extra innings. She asked Alex about his family, about his dreams of writing a novel someday, and listened like every word mattered. One crisp October evening, we were at her house again, carving pumpkins on the back porch. Alex's hands were covered in pumpkin guts. Grandma laughed so hard she had to sit down. I watched them and realized this was what family could look like. Not perfect, not pain-free, but chosen and real. Then the phone rang. Dad! Grandma answered on speaker without thinking. His voice filled the porch. Mom, I need you to stop this. People at church are talking. They're saying I let my mother get brainwashed by. Grandma cut him off. By my grandson, living his truth? Let them talk, Michael. I'm 80 years old. I don't have time left to care what small-minded people think. The line went quiet. Then Dad said something I never expected. I'm scared, Mom. Scared Ryan will end up hurt. Scared I already hurt him too much. Grandma's eyes met mine. Then fix it, before it's too late. He hung up. We sat in silence for a long minute. Alex reached across the table and took my hand. He's trying, in his own messed-up way. I nodded throat tight. That night, I sent Dad a text. Nothing long, just, I'm still your son. Whenever you're ready. He didn't reply, but the read receipt showed up almost immediately. Winter arrived early that year. Snow blanketed Chicago, turning the city into a postcard. Alex and I spent lazy Sundays in my apartment, wrapped in blankets, planning a trip to visit his parents in California for Christmas. Grandma insisted we spend Thanksgiving with her first. I want to cook for my boys, she said, and the word boys made both of us grin like idiots. Thanksgiving morning, we arrived at her house loaded with pies and wine. The table was set for 5, Dad's place empty, but still there. We didn't mention it. We laughed. We ate. We watched the parade on TV like normal families do. At one point, Grandma pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of my mom as a little girl, pictures of me as a gap-toothed kid. In one photo, Grandma stood beside a woman I didn't recognize, arms linked, both of them smiling like the world belonged to them. That was Margaret, she said softly. The one who got away. Alex and I listened as she told the story she had never shared before. How she had almost left Grandpa for Margaret. How fear had won. How she had regretted it every single day since. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I hugged her tight. You're not losing me, Grandma. Not ever. Later, when Alex was helping with dishes, she pulled me aside in the hallway. He's good for you, Ryan. Don't let anyone, not even me, make you doubt that again. I promised I wouldn't. The next morning, Dad showed up on her doorstep while we were still there. No truck this time. Just him in a wool coat, snow in his hair, holding a bottle of the scotch I used to steal sips of as a teenager. He didn't speak at first, just stood there looking older than I remembered. I was wrong, he finally said, about a lot of things. Grandma invited him in. We sat in the living room, awkward and quiet. Dad looked at Alex. I don't understand it, but I see how happy my son is. And that's enough for now. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a rainbow parade, but it was a beginning. Christmas in California felt like stepping into someone else's perfect life. Alex's parents welcomed me with open arms and too much food. His mom hugged me for a full minute and whispered, "We've been waiting for you." His dad took me golfing and didn't flinch when Alex held my hand at dinner. For the first time in years, I felt what it was like to be celebrated instead of tolerated. We FaceTimed Grandma every evening. She sat in her living room, wearing the ridiculous reindeer sweater we had sent her, waving at the camera with both hands. "Tell your mother I want her recipe for that cranberry sauce," she demanded. Alex's mom laughed and promised to email it. Watching them connect across the miles healed something deep inside me. Back in Chicago, the new year brought new challenges. Work promoted me to senior coordinator, which meant longer hours, but also the freedom to pitch campaigns that actually mattered. I started volunteering at a local LGBTQ youth center on weekends, mentoring kids who reminded me of myself at 17, scared, angry, hopeful. Alex joined me sometimes, sharing stories from his classroom. We became a team in every sense of the word. Grandma's health started to worry me. She tired more easily, forgot little things. One February afternoon, she called me in a panic because she couldn't remember where she had put her car keys. I drove out immediately. We found them in the freezer, her new favorite hiding spot, apparently. She laughed it off, but I saw the fear in her eyes. That night, I stayed over. We sat up late drinking tea. "I'm not scared of dying, Ryan. I'm scared of leaving you before you're ready." I took her hand. "I'm ready, Grandma. Because of you." Spring arrived with sudden warmth. Dad started coming to Sunday dinners at Grandma's house. He still stiffened when Alex and I touched, but he asked polite questions about Alex's job and even laughed at one of his terrible jokes. Progress. Jake kept his distance, but Claire brought her new boyfriend to one dinner and introduced me as my brother Ryan and his partner Alex. The word partner felt like victory. One warm May evening, Alex and I took Grandma to the lakefront for the first time since winter. We rented bikes and rode along the path, wind in our hair, laughing when she rang her bell at every seagull. At the end of the pier, we stopped to watch the sunset. Alex slipped his arm around my waist. Grandma watched us with the softest smile I had ever seen. "You two remind me of what love should look like," she said. "Don't ever settle for less." That night back in my apartment, Alex got down on one knee. No big production, just us in sweatpants, the city lights twinkling through the window. He held out a simple silver band. "I don't need perfect timing or a crowd. I just need you. Marry me, Ryan." I said yes before he finished the sentence. We called Grandma at midnight. She cried happy tears and demanded to be the first to see the ring in person. Planning a wedding felt surreal. We kept it small. Close friends, Alex's family flying in, Grandma as the guest of honor. Dad surprised us by offering to pay for the flowers. "It's the least I can do," he muttered. I hugged him for the first time in years. The wedding took place on a sunny September afternoon in Grandma's backyard, the same yard where I'd learned to ride a bike and where I had once cried over my first heartbreak. White chairs lined the grass. String lights hung from the trees, even though it was daytime. Mia stood as my best woman. Alex's brother was his best man. When I walked down the aisle with Grandma on my arm, she whispered, "I'm so proud of you, kiddo." Her steps were slower now, but her grip was strong. Alex waited under the arch of flowers, eyes shining. The moment I reached him, everything else faded. We said vows we had written ourselves, promises to choose each other every day, to keep learning, to build a life that felt like home. Grandma read a poem during the ceremony, voice steady despite the tears. When we kissed, the small crowd cheered louder than any stadium. Dad clapped. Jake even showed up, standing awkwardly at the back but staying until the end. Later, as the sun set and music played, I found Grandma sitting on the porch swing watching everyone dance. I sat beside her. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." She patted my knee. "Thank you for teaching an old woman how to be brave again." Alex joined us, handing her a glass of punch. The three of us sat in comfortable silence as laughter floated across the yard. For the first time in my life, every piece of my world felt aligned. Months later, we moved into a small house with a backyard big enough for future family barbecues. Grandma visited every weekend, bringing cookies and stories. Dad and I talked on the phone twice a month, still careful, still growing. Claire became the aunt who spoiled us with gifts. Even Jake sent a Christmas card that year. Life wasn't perfect. There were still hard days when old fears crept in. But we faced them together, me, Alex, and the family we had chosen and the family that had chosen us back. One quiet evening as snow fell outside our window, Alex and I sat on the couch with hot chocolate, Grandma's latest letter open on the coffee table. She had written simply, "Love wins. Always has. Always will." I looked at the man beside me, the one who had stood through slammed doors and slammed hearts, and knew she was right. True or false? Family acceptance should never require us to be anything less than who we truly are.